During the 90s as well, there would be more offbeat philanthropy events, and marathon events began to be a norm. Phi Mu began its annual swing-a-thon for the Children's Miracle Network. Alpha Phi would begin its Seesaw Marathon, which Sigma Pi had done previously. Sigma Tau Gamma continued the traditional bike-a-thon, and Sigma Tau Gamma also had been part of the Jerry Lewis Labor Day MDA telethon. They'd worked the phone stations at Newmarket North Mall in Hampton. Also, though, with university status, also began the transition from the commuter campus to residential campus, as we know CNU today. As residence halls opened, the missions of Greek organizations can change because now there were students there living on campus who could oversee the day-to-day activities of the organizations 24 hours a day. And some organizations began taking advantage of these, such as Pi Kappa Phi. In 1997, for example, they hosted an event called the Toll Road during move-in weekend, where they collected money for their fundraiser, Push America, which represents people understanding the severely handicapped. They build playground equipment for children with disabilities, and they would collect money from people driving up to Santoro Hall, which was the only residential facility on campus at the time, charging money for those people to pass. In the end, they raised several thousand for Push America, and it was hailed by an article in the captain's log as explicitly breaking the stereotype of Animal House. So obviously this had been a move that had set the tone for a move in the fraternity scene. And during the 1990s as well, as residential status and university status set in, academics were seen as more of a concern. According to an article from the captain's log in 1990, the GPAs of the organizations on campus had all averages of below 2.5, with Sigma Tau Gamma holding the highest with an average of 2.47. So improvements were implemented to GPA as organizations began to restructure themselves. In the 1980s, academics have been quite well at CNC because one member of Sigma Pi, while they were still in colony status, had received their national award for outstanding scholastics. Also, for numerous controversial actions and various issues, several organizations lost their recognition in the around the year 2000. One of these organizations would be reinstated about 5-6 years later. However, several of them would be later closed by their national. Greek life, therefore, in the early part of this decade had a bit of some rebuilding to do. And between 2002 and 2005, 3 new fraternities and 2 new sororities would open their doors on the campus of CNU. The first was Sigma Phi Epsilon, which was officially granted colony status in 2002 and would begin building its recruitment in January of 2003. They worked with an odd, actually not an odd mission, a unique mission. They have a program called Balanced Man, which replaces the traditional new member education process with a procedure of leadership development and with programs of leadership and brotherhood development that leads a man to work. leads men to work towards brotherhood and leadership as well as scholastics. This SIGEP, as they're colloquially known, set out to have a goal of an all-chapter GPA of 3.2, therefore quite shattering the bar compared to 1990. Also in 2003, Alpha Sigma Alpha, which is a national sorority, opened its doors here after a rather quick period of colonization, as most sororities do. I mean, I'm not going to say copying actually, but emulating Alpha Phi, which had quickly built its membership base over about a month span in 1994 when they were colonizing. Alpha Sigma Alpha recruited and began holding events, mainly the Rockathon, for their philanthropy, which is, for their philanthropy. Can't remember it off the top of my head, but also Zeta Tau Alpha was another sorority that opened. They came in 2005. Their philanthropy is the Susan G. Komen Breast Cancer Foundation, and they began holding support groups for survivors and their families, and they would appear at numerous events to distribute literature about breast cancer, its awareness, and its treatment. I mean, one of such events was a Washington Redskins football game, so they were in a very high-profile environment presenting information about a very high killer of women. The two fraternities that opened after SIGEP, Tau Delta Phi, fraternity based on multiculturalism, diversity, and rejecting the stereotypes outright, opened under the leadership of Pietro Sasso in 2003, would receive their charter in 2004, and gain recognition from the university in 2005. They hosted events early on, such as the Slam and Jam, which was a car smash event to raise money, as well as the Castle of Cans for the Peninsula Food Bank. Kappa Delta Rho opened its doors as a colony in 2004. We gained recognition the same year. Actually, they opened in 2003, gained recognition in 2004, and were chartered in 2006. They work with underprivileged children through their program KDR Kids, and they put several benefits on every year. All right, Greek life at CNU, in the nearly 40 years it has existed, has been around to provide brotherhood and sisterhood activities, as well as philanthropy and leadership events that have allowed Greeks to develop a broader sense of social responsibility and understanding, while building connections for their professional lives and beyond. I mean, these Greek organizations at CNU have worked in philanthropy and leadership to distance themselves from Animal House quite significantly. They are leaders on the community in other organizations such as student government, campus activity board, athletic teams, etc., and continue to stand out as the prime leaders in the community at CNU. All right, I'm finished. I'd like to thank Joe Fitzpatrick, a fellow brother of Tau Delta Phi fraternity of mine, for being my cameraman today. I'd also like to thank Dr. Philip Hamilton for providing me the opportunity to video record my oral report and present it through the internet. Thank you very much.